The phone call came 3 days after my daughter's wedding. I was still riding the high of watching Bryony walk down the aisle in the dress we'd picked out together, still seeing her face light up when Dashiell slipped that ring on her finger. The wedding had been perfect. Everyone said so. 200 guests at the historic Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina. String quartet during the ceremony, jazz band at the reception. I'd spent 18 months planning every detail with Bryony, and it had all come together beautifully. My baby girl was married to a successful architect who clearly adored her. What more could a mother want? Then Lennox called. He was the photographer we'd hired, came highly recommended by 3 different friends. His portfolio was stunning, artistic shots that captured real emotion, not just posed smiles. He'd been everywhere during the wedding, snapping candid moments, climbing ladders for overhead shots, lying on the ground for dramatic angles. Professional, unobtrusive, perfect. His voice on the phone sounded strained, uncomfortable. "Mrs. Vaughn," he said, "I need to talk to you about something I found in the wedding photos." Something disturbing. My heart immediately jumped to worst-case scenarios. Had someone's dress ripped? Had Uncle Bernard gotten too drunk and done something inappropriate? Was there a wardrobe malfunction I'd missed? "Can you come to my studio today?" Lennox asked. "I'd rather show you in person than try to explain over the phone." "It's important." An hour later, I was sitting in his downtown studio, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and natural light flooding through massive windows. Lennox looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, coffee cup trembling slightly in his hand. He pulled up a folder on his computer labeled Vaughn Wedding and clicked through to a subfolder I noticed was titled For Review Only. "My name is Celestine Vaughn, though everyone calls me Celeste. I'm 63 years old, retired from 30 years as an interior designer. I raised Bryony by myself after her father walked out when she was 2. She's my whole world, my greatest accomplishment. Watching her marry Dashiell had felt like the happy ending to our story. Now, sitting in that photographer's studio, I felt the first crack of doubt." Lennox pulled up a photo from the reception. It showed the dance floor, guests laughing and moving to the music. Nothing seemed wrong at first glance. He zoomed in on the background, near the bar area. There was Dashiell, my new son-in-law, talking to someone. A woman I didn't recognize from the wedding. She was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a simple black dress. Not a bridesmaid, not a guest I remembered meeting. "Do you know who this is?" Lennox asked. I shook my head. He clicked to the next photo, same woman, now with her hand on Dashiell's arm. His body language was familiar, intimate. The next photo showed them stepping into a side hallway. The next showed them in that hallway, alone. Dashiell had his hand on her face, and she was looking up at him with an expression I recognized because I'd seen it on Bryony's face. Adoration. Love. My stomach twisted. "Who is she?" I whispered. "I don't know," Lennox said. "But there's more." He clicked through a series of photos. The woman appearing in the background of ceremony shots, sitting in the back row. Her watching Dashiell at the altar with an expression that wasn't quite happiness. More photos from the cocktail hour showing Dashiell glancing at her repeatedly while standing next to Bryony. Then the reception photos, the 2 of them disappearing into that hallway for 7 minutes. Lennox had time-stamped photos proving it. 7 minutes during his own wedding reception while his bride danced with guests, unaware. I felt sick, but the worst photo came last. Lennox hesitated before showing me, his cursor hovering over the file. "Mrs. Vaughn, this one is difficult," he warned. The photo showed Dashiell and the mystery woman in that hallway. They were kissing, not a friendly peck, not a casual gesture. This was passionate, desperate, the kind of kiss that told a story of history and longing. The timestamp showed it was taken at 9:47 p.m., right when Bryony had been throwing her bouquet. While my daughter celebrated with her friends, her brand new husband was in a hallway kissing another woman. I couldn't breathe. The studio felt too small, too hot. Lennox got me water, helped me sit down properly. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I debated whether to tell you at all, but I couldn't let you get the full wedding album with these photos buried in there without warning." "Does Bryony know?" I managed to ask. "Not yet. You're the first person I've contacted. I wasn't sure if I should go to her directly or to you first." "Thank you for calling me first," I said, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. Part of me wished I could go back to 3 hours ago when I still believed in my daughter's perfect marriage. "We need to find out who this woman is." Lennox nodded. "I did some digging already. I hope that's okay." He pulled up a social media profile. The woman's name was Sable Christensen. According to her Instagram, she was a junior associate at the same architecture firm where Dashiell worked as a senior partner. Her profile was public, and Lennox had scrolled back through months of posts. There were photos of Sable at firm events, always positioned near Dashiell. Photos from a conference in Miami 6 months ago where both of them had attended. A picture from someone's birthday party at the office where Sable and Dashiell stood close together, his arm casually around her shoulders. The evidence painted a clear picture. How long has this been going on? I asked, more to myself than Lennox. He pulled up more wedding photos, these showing Sable's face during different moments. During the vows, she looked like she might cry. During the first dance, she watched from the shadows with her arms crossed. During the cake cutting, she'd left entirely, visible in photos walking toward the parking lot before returning 20 minutes later with red eyes. This woman was in love with Dashiell, and he'd invited her to his wedding. The cruelty of that hit me hard. What kind of man does this? I asked. Lennox shook his head. I've photographed over 300 weddings. I've seen cheating before, usually groomsmen or guests sneaking off with someone they shouldn't. But I've never seen a groom kiss someone else during his own reception. This is different. I need copies of everything, I told him. Every photo with her in it, every timestamp, everything you found. Lennox had anticipated this. He handed me a USB drive. It's all here. I also wrote a detailed timeline documenting when and where each photo was taken. If you need me to testify to the authenticity of these images, I will. I drove home in a daze. Bryony and Dashiell were currently on their honeymoon in Bali, due back in 10 days. She'd been sending me photos every day. Beautiful sunsets, exotic meals, her smiling face next to Dashiell's. She looked so happy. How could I destroy that? But how could I not tell her the truth? At home, I plugged in the USB drive and went through everything again. The timeline Lennox created was meticulous. Sable had arrived at the venue at 3:15 p.m., 30 minutes before the ceremony started. She'd signed the guest book using just her first name. She'd sat in the last row, far from anyone who might question her presence. During cocktail hour, she'd positioned herself near the bar where Dashiell would see her. Their first documented interaction was at 6:42 p.m., a brief conversation that lasted 90 seconds. Their hallway encounter began at 9:40 p.m. and ended at 9:47 p.m. She'd left the reception at 10:55 p.m., before the send-off. Professional, calculated, someone who knew how to hide in plain sight. I called Waverly, my best friend since college. She'd been at the wedding, had helped me get ready that morning, had cried with me during the father-daughter dance that Bryony and I had shared since her dad wasn't there. Waverly came over within the hour. I showed her everything. She went through the same emotions I had. Disbelief, then anger, then heartbreak for Bryony. We have to tell her, Waverly said. She deserves to know before she comes home. I can't do it over the phone while she's on her honeymoon, I protested. Then we wait until she's back, but Celeste, we cannot let her stay married to this man without knowing the truth. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing that photo of them kissing, kept imagining Bryony's face when she found out. My daughter had been through so much already. A difficult breakup 5 years ago, a job she'd lost due to company downsizing, the struggle to find someone she could trust after her father abandoned us. She'd thought Dashiell was her safe harbor. The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to Dashiell's architecture firm. It was Saturday, but the receptionist told me some people worked weekends. I said I was there to drop off documents for Dashiell, that I was his mother-in-law. The young man at the desk smiled. Oh, Dashiell's on his honeymoon. But I can leave whatever you have in his office mailbox. Is Sable Christensen working today? I asked, trying to sound casual. The receptionist checked a computer. She's in, actually. 3rd floor, northeast corner office. Would you like me to call up? No, I'll just leave this with you, I said, pretending I had something to hand over. Then I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. I had no plan, no idea what I'd say. I just needed to see her, to understand who this woman was that could destroy my daughter's marriage. I found her office easily. The door was open, and she sat at her desk reviewing blueprints. In person, she looked younger than her photos, maybe only 24 or 25. Pretty, but not remarkably so. What made her worth risking everything? I knocked on the door frame. She looked up, and her face immediately changed. recognition, then fear. Mrs. Vaughn, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. So you know who I am, I said, stepping into her office and closing the door behind me. We need to talk. Sable's hands shook as she closed her laptop. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she started. I don't care what you meant, I interrupted. I care about what you did. You came to my daughter's wedding and kissed her husband. She flinched at the words. How long have you been sleeping with Dashiell? 2 years, she whispered, and my world tilted again. 2 years? Bryony and Dashiell had been together for 3 years, engaged for 18 months. The affair had lasted through most of their relationship. He told me he was going to break up with her, Sable said, tears starting to fall. He promised me after the promotion went through, he'd end things. But then they got engaged, and he said he couldn't back out without it looking bad for his career. I laughed bitterly. So he married her instead? Sable's face crumpled. I begged him not to go through with it. That's why I came to the wedding. I thought if I was there, if he saw me, he'd realize he was making a mistake. He'd stop the ceremony and choose me. But he didn't. Did you really think he'd leave his bride at the altar for you? I asked. She sobbed harder, shaking her head. After the ceremony, I tried to leave. But he found me in the parking lot. He begged me to stay, said he needed to see me one more time before the honeymoon. I was stupid enough to believe he'd come back to me after Bali. That he'd file for an annulment or something. I felt a strange mixture of fury and pity. This girl had been manipulated too, fed lies that let Dashiell have everything he wanted. But she'd also made choices. She'd participated in destroying my daughter's trust. I'm telling Bryony everything, I said. When she gets back from Bali, she's going to know exactly who her husband is. Sable nodded miserably. I understand. Can I ask you something? Why did you come to me instead of going to Dashiell first? Because he's a liar, I said. Anything he tells me would be designed to protect himself. I wanted the truth, and I knew you'd give it to me. I left her office and drove straight to a lawyer's office. I'd called ahead, asked for an emergency Saturday appointment. The attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Moss, listened to everything and reviewed Lennox's photos. This is clear evidence of infidelity, she said. If your daughter wants to pursue an annulment or quick divorce, we have grounds. The marriage is only 3 days old. In North Carolina, we can argue fraud. He entered the marriage while involved with another woman, which speaks to his intent and honesty. But we need to move fast. Once they return from the honeymoon, the longer the marriage continues, the more complicated it becomes. I can't make this decision for Bryony, I said. I know, Patricia replied gently. But you can prepare her options so she's not making decisions in the immediate shock. I retained Patricia's services, paid her retainer from my savings. Then I went home and waited. The next week was torture. Bryony called every other day from Bali, gushing about the resort, the food, how wonderful Dashiell was being. Each conversation felt like swallowing glass. Waverly came over every evening, helped me stay sane. We need to plan how you'll tell her, Waverly said. Sit down with her as soon as they land, before she even goes home with him. Let her process it with you there for support. The night before their return flight, I finally got a call I wasn't expecting. Detective Harding from the Asheville Police Department. Mrs. Vaughn, I'm calling because a Sable Christensen came to our office today and filed a report. A report about what? She claims Dashiell Morrison has been blackmailing her for the past 6 months. She has text messages and emails where he threatened to ruin her career if she didn't continue their relationship. She also provided evidence that he'd been embezzling from the architecture firm and had been using her access to accounts to cover it up. I sat down hard. This was bigger than an affair. Detective Harding continued. Miss Christensen says she came forward because you confronted her, and she realized she couldn't keep protecting him. We're investigating the financial crimes now. I thought you should know because your daughter is married to someone who may be facing criminal charges. After I hung up, I called Patricia immediately. She was already aware. Sable had contacted her first, asking for immunity in exchange for cooperation. The lawyer explained that if the embezzlement charges stuck, Dashiell was looking at serious prison time. Bryony and Dashiell landed the next afternoon. I picked up Bryony alone. She'd texted that Dashiell was going straight to the office to catch up on work. Perfect. I drove her to my house instead of hers, saying I wanted to hear all about the honeymoon. She was sunburned and glowing, full of stories about snorkeling and temple visits. Then I showed her the photos. I watched my daughter's face as she processed each image. The confusion, the denial, the slow dawning of horror. This can't be real, she whispered. Mom, there has to be an explanation. I showed her the timeline, Lennox's documentation, the guest book signature. Then I told her about my conversation with Sable, about the 2-year affair, about the promises Dashiell had made. Bryony vomited, literally ran to my bathroom and threw up. When she came out, her face was pale and said, "Where is he now?" "At his office," I said. "There's more you need to know." I told her about the embezzlement investigation, about Detective Harding's call. By the time I finished, Bryony looked like a stranger. All the softness was gone, replaced by cold fury. "I want to see him," she said. "Not alone," I replied. "We call Patricia first." The lawyer met us at Dashiell and Bryony's apartment an hour later. We waited in the living room, surrounded by unpacked suitcases and wedding gifts still in their wrapping. When Dashiell walked in, his face went through a series of expressions. Surprise at seeing all of us, confusion, then recognition as he saw the manila folder in Patricia's hands. Bryony stood up. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She simply said, "I know everything. About Sable, about the affair, about the embezzlement. Our marriage is over." Dashiell tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. He claimed Sable was obsessed with him, that the kiss meant nothing, that the financial issues were a misunderstanding. Patricia shut him down immediately. Mr. Morrison, anything you say can and will be used against you in both criminal proceedings and divorce proceedings. I suggest you contact your own attorney. We're filing for annulment on grounds of fraud tomorrow morning. Detective Harding will be contacting you shortly regarding the embezzlement investigation. Dashiell's face went from pleading to angry. You're going to regret this, Bryony. Your mother poisoned you against me. She can't stand to see you happy. Wrong, I said, stepping forward. I can't stand to see my daughter married to a criminal who cheated on her during their wedding reception. There's a difference. We left him standing in that apartment. Bryony moved back home with me that night, and we filed the annulment papers the next morning. The embezzlement investigation moved quickly. Dashiell had stolen over $400,000 from the firm across 2 years, using Sable's login credentials to hide the transfers. She'd known about some of it but had been threatened into silence. The firm pressed charges immediately. Dashiell was arrested 2 weeks after returning from his honeymoon. The annulment was granted after 30 days. The marriage had lasted exactly 1 month. Bryony struggled, of course. Some days were harder than others. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs, for trusting too easily. But slowly, with therapy and support, she began to heal. Lennox never charged us for the wedding photos. He said documenting the truth was more important than payment. 6 months later, Dashiell pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His architecture license was revoked. Sable received immunity for her cooperation and left the state, starting over somewhere else. Now, a year later, Bryony is rebuilding her life. She's dating again, cautiously. She's started her own marketing consulting business and it's thriving. And me? I learned that sometimes the worst thing that can happen leads to the best outcome. If Dashiell's true nature hadn't been revealed, Bryony might have spent years with him, maybe had children, before discovering the truth. The wedding photos that should have captured joy instead captured evidence of betrayal. But they also captured the moment before my daughter learned the truth and chose herself. That's worth documenting too. If you're watching this story and you've just gotten married, or you're planning a wedding, I want you to know something important. Marriage should be built on truth and trust. If your partner is lying to you before you even say your vows, it won't get better after. It'll only get worse. To the photographers out there, thank you for doing what Lennox did. Telling the truth is hard, especially when it means destroying someone's happiness. But short-term pain is better than long-term deception. You might save someone years of suffering. To daughters everywhere with protective mothers, I know sometimes we seem overbearing. We ask too many questions, we worry too much, we don't always trust your choices. But everything we do comes from love. When your world falls apart, we'll be there to help you rebuild it. That's what mothers do. And to anyone who's been betrayed by someone they trusted completely, I want you to hear this. It's not your fault. You're not stupid for believing someone who claimed to love you. They're the ones who chose deception. You chose love. Never apologize for having a trusting heart. Just be more careful about who you give it to. Bryony is stronger now than she ever was in that marriage. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the catalyst for our best life. I'm watching my daughter thrive, and I'm grateful every single day for that photographer's phone call that changed everything. Thank you for listening to our story. Dashiell Morrison. 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Annulment granted after 30 days. Bryony rebuilt her life and now runs a successful marketing firm. Sable cooperated with authorities and relocated. Resources. National DV Hotline. 1-800-799-7233. Report fraud. Tips.fbi.gov. Legal help. AmericanBar.org. Document everything. Truth wins. Now to the lovely viewers of this channel. Got a story? We want to hear it. Your voice matters here. Whether it's a personal experience, a revenge moment, a wild betrayal, or just an idea that could make our next story even better, we're listening. Tell us, what themes you want more of? What twists keep you hooked? What hit you hardest in this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more satisfying stories like this.